Good evening, and welcome to the City of Warrenville Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole regular meeting. It's Monday, April 8th, 7 p.m. Can we have a roll call, please?
Alderman Ashour.
Here.
Alderman Berry.
Here?
Alderman Bevere.
Here.
Alderman Davalos.
Here.
Alderman Goodman.
Here.
Alderman Hoffman.
Here.
Alderman Widener.
Here.
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and now it's time for citizens' comments. If we have anyone that would like to make a comment now, or if you would like to make a comment during one of the items that is on the agenda for the business of the meeting, you just have to let us know, and you can come up and make your comment. Officials and staff, Mayor?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, Alderman? Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. I just have a clarifying question. The weekly report had something about the recycling event, the recycling for shredding and recycling electronics and medications is going to be on May 4th, Saturday, May 4th at Bauer School. There wasn't a time on that, so for people that are becoming aware of that, does anyone know, is that like 9 to 12, or does it go later? Or do we know yet?
It is from 9 a.m. to noon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other aldermen? Okay, staff? Oh, yes, I'll get to you. Oh, okay. City Administrator Coakley?
Thank you. Jumping the gun here. Just for information, there was a revised weekly report. We realized this morning there was a couple of errors, including that in the report. So there was a revised email, one emailed out late this afternoon. You probably haven't gotten a chance to check your email yet, but that's all should be corrected. Also, the bike rodeo was missing its date, and I think that is now, it had the date but not the time, so that is also corrected in the weekly report, plus a couple of other typos. And it should say the April 5th, 2019 version. That's how you'll know, not the March whatever date that was in error too. So just to make sure you see the revised one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now staff, no? Okay. Okay, I guess that's it. On to the business of the meeting. Number one, let me see here. Request to join the Illinois Public Works Mutual Aid Network. That would be Management Analyst Justin Miller.
Good evening, Council. Tonight before you is a consideration to join the Illinois Public Works Mutual Aid Network, which was established in 2009 to create an all hazards, all disciplines approach to sharing resources between various public works entities across Illinois. The network fosters intergovernmental cooperation by developing and maintaining a statewide network of public works agencies to provide mutual aid response when a member is confronted with emergencies or disasters. As with other mutual aid networks, the city has full control and discretion over its own resources. The agreement does not obligate any agency to respond, nor does it require an explanation for whether an agency responds or not. An agency is not expected to send resources if it impacts its own ability to effectively manage daily operations or response. When responding to a request for assistance, the responding organization is encouraged to provide 5 days of personnel, equipment, and material support without reimbursement. Any support given after 5 days would be billed to the organization requesting assistance. The network currently has 300 members across the state of Illinois. In DuPage County specifically, there are 25 members, including our neighbors, the city of Wheaton and the village of Winfield. And again, the only cost is the network requires yearly dues of $100 to the city. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Alderman, any questions? Alderman Wilson?
Have we had occasion since 2009 to participate in this one way or the other?
No, we have not.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Widener?
We've checked with our insurance provider, I assume, and that coverage for any of our equipment or personnel, if they happen to leave the jurisdiction of City of Warrenville, would be covered at that
Yes,
time?
each responding organization is required to have its own insurance. And if there are claims, it would go on the organization respond. Oh, no, we have not. We will do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments or Alderman Goodman?
Just wondering, it says in it that you have to adopt this exact version in order to join, but there are some vague provisions that say things like, if you are reimbursed, you're reimbursed at either this rate or this rate or this rate, which is pretty vague. You don't know which rate you'd be reimbursed at. I mean, if I were a lawyer writing this agreement, I might try and make things a bit more specific, but I believe the way that it's implemented is you have to adopt this exact version of the agreement in order to join. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So it's sort of a take it or leave it proposition. The only changes that I found were pretty minor, so I guess I don't really have an issue with that, but I was just wondering if the city attorney had felt the same way.
Yes, the city attorney reviewed it and did not have any additional comments or
Okay.
revisions. Yep.
Good.
Okay. Alderman Weidner?
Yeah, providing the insurance requirements are met and agreed to, I make a motion to recommend the City Council approve a resolution authorizing the execution of the Illinois Public Works Mutual Aid Network, IPWMAN agreement.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Weidner and a second by Alderman Bevere. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Number 2, consideration of a request to dispose of surplus city property. Again, Management Analyst Justin Miller.
Thank you, Council. Public Works has identified several items that are no longer utilized or have been replaced. The list of the items for disposal is included with the backup material tonight. Most of them are just miscellaneous utility division items that were done from inventorying, going through and cleaning out the inventory. Public Works would again utilize Obanoff auction services. The city would receive 94% of the auction property value with a 6% fee, which would go towards Obanoff as a service fee. Obanoff handles the transactions of the items. The department has utilized their services before and found them to be satisfactory. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Alderman Goodman?
Yeah, there's one item on the list which has its condition listed as new. So I guess my question is, could we return that if it's new? And or does that just mean it's pretty good and was in fact used?
The latter, it was pretty good. It's been used, but it's in relatively good shape. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well then, I would like to make a motion to recommend the city council approve an ordinance authorizing disposal of city-owned surplus property utilizing Obanoff auction services.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Bevere. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 3, consideration of engineering agreement for sanitary sewer flow monitoring. Deputy Public Works Director Phil Kukler.
Thank you. You may recall that last year we started implementing a infiltration and inflow reduction program, or an I&I reduction program, for the sanitary sewer system, and that's to identify issues where stormwater is either coming in through deficiencies of the pipes or manholes, or even coming in over the surface through like the top of a manhole, and to reduce that, because we ultimately pay. We send that water down to Naperville, and we pay for stormwater treatment to Naperville with water that we should be keeping out of the system. Naperville has been pretty aggressive in their I&I reduction program over the years, and I think it was 2 years ago they started identifying concerns to the city that we needed to be addressing that with ours as well, or they might consider stop signing IEPA permits for developments in our projects in Warrenville. So Public Works and Community Development staff worked together and came up with a full build-out plan. We had a memorandum of understanding with Naperville last year that was approved by City Council on actions that Warrenville would take moving forward, and then actions that Naperville is committed to taking moving forward too, which really primarily consisted on working with Warrenville and helping us with providing information to help with the steps we need to take, and also a critical one for us is signing IEPA permits and keeping that moving. Last year we had, so the city's sanitary sewer system was split up into 11 basins, and those were basically sized by trying to equally divide up the city's length of sanitary sewer. So we've got 11 basins. Last year was the first phase, which was flow monitoring for the highest priority basin. The agreement that's under consideration tonight is the second basin, the flow monitoring for that basin. The costs seem to be about $50,000 each year for that. Last year, I think it was about $47,000 or $48,000. This year's $51,000. It's primarily based on the length of the sanitary sewer within the basin. I will have a contract coming later on, probably in the next month or two, for the second phase of last year's basin, which would be some identification and analysis to determine what projects might need to be done next year, or next year, a year from now, to correct some of the deficiencies they've identified. So this is an important program for us to keep moving on. We should have probably been doing it for the last 20 years or so. We're a little bit behind the curve on this one. So it's important that we started this last year and keep moving forward on this. And it's something that we're going to be dealing with on into the future, even after these first round of improvements are done in each basin. The system will continue to age, and there'll continue to be I&I issues. We're not going to address 100% of it going through this first round of it, but we are going to identify as much as we can and do as much work as we can in-house as well to help supplement this and not just farm it all out. But this ties directly to also the sanitary sewer televising camera that's in the budget this year, and that's going to help us save some money and do some of this work in-house. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
Thank you. Questions? Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions on the overall project. So there's 11 basins, and there's 3 phases in each basin that we'll have to go through?
That's correct.
Okay. And do we do all phase 1s, and then we do all phase 2s of the 11 basins and all phase 3s, or is there a program? Do we just...
No, it's staggered. So last year was the first year, but we did phase 1 in the first basin. This year's the second year. We'll do phase 2 in the first basin and phase 1 in the second basin. And then starting next year, we'll be doing phase 1 in a basin, phase 2 in a basin, and phase 3 in a basin all in the same year for then 11 years in a row.
So we did 3 different ones last year?
No, we only did 1. We did the first phase in the first basin
Okay,
last
so
year.
this West 2 basin is phase 1?
Yes, it's phase 1 for the West 2 basin.
Okay, then will we do the third basin phase 1 before we do the second on 1 or 2?
No, so this year we're doing the first phase on basin west, the 2 West, and then the basin West 3 was the phase we did last year, the first phase of basin West 3 last year. So we'll be doing phase 2 of that. I just received the proposal on that, so it's not on tonight's agenda, but it will be coming in an upcoming committee meeting.
Okay, so this one tonight is in the 2020 budget.
Yes,
So another one will come up this year, and we will add it into the 2020 budget? Or
that's planned for in the 2020 budget as well.
that's planned for, is that already in it?
Yes.
And that's the stuff, okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Goodman?
Talk to me a little bit about orders of magnitude of costs. We've got $47,000 last year for phase 1 of the other basin, $51,000 this year for phase 1 of the second basin. But phase 2 and phase 3 is anticipated to be more expensive. This is the investigation part of the process. This isn't actually fixing any of the leaks or problems that we find as we investigate, correct?
That's correct. So the phase 1 in every basin will be flow monitoring, which they go out and place monitors at locations within the system that they identify so they can monitor the flows. It's over an 8-week period. They also have rain gauges so they can identify what the weather's during that time, so they can correlate the rainfall to the increase in flows in the sanitary sewer. Phase 2 in each of the basins will be an analysis of that. There's they're going to do smoke testing of manholes to find any leaks in manholes that might need to be fixed. They're going to start identifying projects that need to be done and improvements that need to be made to do that. And phase 3 would be the most costly of the 3 phases for each basin. And that's going to involve actual improvements. It might be lining manholes. It might be actually digging up and doing repairs. It might be lining pipe. We're also going to be, in EEI's report, they estimated it would be about $600,000 a year when we're doing 3 phases at once. So doing all 3 phases in a single year, they estimated it would be about $600,000. Now, some of that, with a sewer camera, we'd be, I think, saving roughly $50,000 a year because of it was a total of $590,000 or $589,000 for televising that was estimated. And by doing that in-house with ourselves, we'd be saving that divided by 11 years, I haven't done the math, but it'd be about roughly $50,000 a year. So in total, we'd be expecting, when we're doing 3 phases, to actually be spending about $550,000 a year.
Okay, but doing it in-house, we still have labor costs, and I believe you said when we were discussing the new camera that this was something we have 2 staff members trained for. Does that mean that that's 2 staff members that are working on this full-time, or the majority of their time, or half their time?
This is what those 2 staff, effectively what those 2 staff members are hired for. They are what comprise our sewer crew. They're out televising anyway. They're doing flushing and cleaning of mains and that type of stuff, and they're working on repairs for it's more than the 2 of them would be involved in a repair if we had to do it in-house, because they wouldn't be doing that just themselves. But their job is solely dedicated to the sanitary sewer system, both monitoring, maintenance, cleaning, and that stuff.
Okay, so, and the videoing is the bulk of what they're doing?
Yes, and they'll be, this will focus them on a particular area at a time. They work their way generally through the city. I forget what the period of years they typically work their way through the city, doing televising now. But this will focus them on specific basins and specific areas based on the priorities identified in our I&I reduction program.
Okay, I'm concerned about the condition of the water and sewer fund, so can you talk to me about the long-term financial plan to pay for this $600,000 a year?
I can't, but I do know finance director had discussed during various meetings and budget meetings, we're going to reconvene the EMRP work group to talk through some of the stuff and work through some of it and plan ahead. It's going to involve, I'm sure it'll involve rate increases. And it's no secret we have really low rates at this point. There haven't been consistent increases. It seems like, from my understanding, that we typically our rates will stay flat, and all of a sudden we'll realize that we should have been increasing them, or we need to do a much larger increase all at once instead of kind of gradually increasing them over years. But it's going to involve some rate increases, which I don't know all of what Kevin plans, but it's something we need to sit down. I wasn't involved last time with the MRP, so this will be my introduction to that work group, and we'll work together on a recommendation moving forward for City Council.
Sure, but when we did the EMRP work group to begin with, we were talking about long-term maintenance and replacement. We were talking about the lifetime of the assets and when it's going to need to be dug out of the ground and replaced. I suppose, part of what you're talking about, the patching of leaks, is something that was probably discussed at a very superficial level as part of that work group, but it wasn't something that we budgeted anywhere near this amount of money for, or that we thought of as sort of lifetime expenses of these assets. So can you talk to me a little bit more about the costs of delaying any of this?
Well, the big cost would be Naperville could stop signing IEPA permits, and they could tell us to build that sanitary sewer holding tank, which last year we'd budgeted, or current fiscal year, we'd budgeted, I think, $500,000 for land acquisition only. And I don't know what the cost of that tank would be yet, because one of the analyses that EEI is performing for us right now is the analysis of the conveyance of our sanitary sewer flows through Naperville and what size that tank might need to be if we were to have to construct it. At this point, Naperville hasn't indicated they're going to tell us to do that, but our flows have exceeded our agreement with them a couple of times, at least during storms, and that's something that could trigger them to tell us to spend the money to build this holding tank.
Okay, but $500,000 for land acquisition is certainly on the order of the costs that you're talking about. That's a very similar number. Obviously, there'd be other costs associated with that tank.
Yeah, and I don't know what that number is yet. I know we budgeted $500,000 for the land acquisition in the current fiscal year budget. I'm guessing it'd be $1 or $2 million at least to build a tank of that size.
Okay, so only 4 years of what you're sort of talking about is a 13-year budgeted issue.
And Naperville not signing IEPA permits in the interim when we have all these developments coming into town.
Until the tank is built, or for the longer term?
I don't know. I can't speak to what Naperville would require of us, but there's certainly be within their rights to require us to build a tank and not sign a permit until that tank is built and online.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Widener?
Motion to recommend the City Council pass a resolution approving the contract with Engineering Enterprises Incorporated for the West 2 Basin infiltration and inflow investigation in an amount of $51,512 and authorizing the city administrator to execute the proposal.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Widener and a second by Alderman Wilson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to number 4, consideration of lease extension for the monopole on Country Ridge Drive. And that would be Deputy Public Works Director Phil Kukler.
Thank you. Verizon owns the monopole that's on the city's well and water tower site on Country Ridge Drive, and American Tower is contracted with them where they essentially, they've been managing that for them. So they approached the city about a year ago to start asking about extending that lease, even though it's not due to expire immediately. They're looking to attract another tenant or two to that monopole, and having the security of having a longer term available to guarantee that they would have that monopole on that site is certainly more attractive to their potential subtenants than if there was only 3 or 4 years left on it. So that was their motivation for doing it. Our motivation is if we've got an agreement that'll last another 30 years where we're going to have income coming in from that for a lease, it's certainly helpful to the city. The various wireless carriers that are on our water towers and Verizon at this site are a significant amount of money toward the enterprise fund. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
Alderman Ashour?
Has there been any comparisons between our lease and other communities that do the same thing to know if we're where we should be financially, if this is common practice, common rent, consistent with the marketplace?
I know initially when, my understanding, when Ron Menser and Mike Smith looked into this years ago when we started leasing our space to the different companies, they did a lot of research at that time. They developed a template that we pretty much told the various wireless carriers that take it or leave it, basically. They've come in, they usually ask for less rent, less of a percent escalator every year on the rent. And since I've been here, we've been approached a handful of times on whether renegotiate or lease amendments or extensions or even a new lease. And they come in asking for, well, it's not, we can't do that. We can't justify it to our client, or we can't justify paying those rates if they've always come back and paid the rates in the end. It's been, I haven't looked recently to see what the other communities are doing, but in talking with City Administrator Coakley, I think we're also uniquely situated. I think our ability to collect rent from these and charge rent to the various wireless carriers is better than other communities that might be around us. Is my understanding, but they usually come right back to, I haven't had anybody walk away from me when I've told them, you've got to keep paying the same rent or at the same rate or go up. Usually they come in asking to reduce the rate or reduce their lease payment or reduce the escalator, and they always end up agreeing with us and executing the lease.
Just curious, because obviously they're looking for long-term and predictability, and that's in their best interest. So I just want to make sure our interests are protected.
City Administrator Coakley?
Thank you. We do not have a current survey to document everything, but in conversations with colleagues, my experience has been exactly what Phil was talking about. At times, the companies would come in and try to renegotiate those, and I've had some conversations with colleagues in the area. Historically, our rates, our terms have always been far higher. The rents we're getting are a lot more, you just put it in simple language, than what our neighboring towns are getting. That goes way back to the start. Our staff did a really good job of finding the most stringent contracts. We realized early on, and the companies realized, that we are still in an area surrounded. The beauty of Warrenville is we're surrounded by open space, and it's a strategic advantage in this case because they cannot put them in Fermilab, they cannot put them in the forest reserves. They want to have them all along the tollway, and our antennas, whether on a monopole or on our water towers, are generating a lot more revenue. In some cases, through my recollection here, it was at least double what some other towns are getting, and some were getting canceled leases or they're consolidating them, so they were losing out on even what they did have. So historically, we've been doing a lot better because of our position in this part of the world.
And is that something we're going to consider on the proposed new water tower? And if we do, should we do our homework before we get into any arrangements with anyone?
We can certainly do, we've got time. That's a good point. We can certainly do and I think they're writing it down right now. We'll do a survey of other towns to find out where we are in the world so we can document that more quantitatively, at least have some support for what the communities are getting around us through at least DuPage and other surrounding towns. And yes, we'd be certainly open to that. Now, we have never gone out and sought leases for our water towers. Companies have come to us because of our, again, our strategic position and big business clientele around us along the tollway, and we are in the right place. For a change, we're in the right place at the right time.
Well, and that's, I guess that's the comment, that if there is a lack of availability and we have the availability, and if there's some way to check and see where we fit in the big picture, to know how valuable our spots are, I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing with them.
We can confirm with the other towns what they're getting and then try to benchmark us. I'm extrapolating a little bit. I don't know if we have the technical ability to really get too deep into that, but we can certainly figure out where we were, where we are, where we have been, and where we're going, and we've done a pretty good job of making that a strategic advantage. Our staff has. I don't want to take credit directly for that. Thank you. We will do that.
Any other questions? Alderman Goodman, did you have your hand raised? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Want to make the motion to recommend the City Council approve an ordinance approving the First Amendment to the Communications Site Lease Agreement between the City of Warrenville and Chicago SMSA Limited Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Bevere. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 5, discussion of the FY 2020 budget. And that would be City Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. As you're aware, we've been working through the budget for a number of weeks now. Staff started that work, of course, months ago. But this is another opportunity to talk about anything with the budget. It is scheduled for the budget ordinance to have the final reading and hopefully adoption on next Monday's City Council agenda, the 15th of April, but it is on tonight's agenda. So if there's questions or comments, we've had a couple related to agenda items already, but if there's more that we want to talk about, or somebody wants to talk about, we'll be happy to answer them. If it requires something from the finance director, I'll certainly talk to him. We'll bring the questions back and then relay them, but if we can answer them tonight, we'll be happy to do so.
Questions? Alderman Ashour?
It's not a question, it's actually a comment. I was looking through the tax increment financing district number 3 highlights, and the proposed purchase of the gas station accounts for $563,000 of the $992,000 of deficit spending. We justify that by saying that the as fund balance accrues, we will pay that back. My disagreement with this in particular is that we're robbing other taxing districts as a part of that process to pay the fund balance back on a project that I disagree with. And I just think it's important with some of the concerns we've had over the spending that's going on, that it be noticed that there's this amount of money that we're just going to spend as a deficit item possibly, and then finance back to ourselves and use money from other taxing districts to pay for it.
Comments? Oh. Alderman Weidner?
I understand that concern, but I think when you take the long view of the community, there's many people that consider that area an eyesore. It's not going to clean up itself under the current ownership, and that in the long run, an acquisition and an improvement in that area would, I think, benefit the tax base by raising property values and making our community more valuable, and that area improve to become an asset to the community rather than a detriment. Thank you.
Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I have to try to remember this, but my understanding is this is sort of an estimated number, basically because of the cleanup and who might be responsible for that and what state funds are available. So it's certainly, anything like this is going to come to council. It's not automatic because it's in the budget where it is. It doesn't mean that that won't be completely voted on and vetted and by the council. So I don't mind seeing that number there because I actually don't know what the final number is going to be. Could be less. I mean, maybe it could be more, but it could be less. And I just think it hasn't been all explored, and there's a lot of holdups going on. And I just really want to see this play out for the reasons that Alderman Widener just explained. I think it's worth hanging in there with this to see what the final result will be. Thanks.
Alderman Goodman?
2 points, not to repeat what's already been said, but one is that this project may not move forward at all. If we don't reach a negotiated price with the owners of that property, then we're not going to do it. Two, if, well, just furthermore on that, if we think that the environmental cleanup is going to be too expensive and would outweigh the value of the property to the taxpayers, then, you know, we may not move forward with that. There's lots of things that could derail this. It's been going pretty slowly. This is a budgeted item which has been rebudgeted from last year because we thought about possibly moving forward with this project, put a placeholder number in the budget before, and as everybody knows, it hasn't moved forward. I think there is some misinformation out there. When I was campaigning, people told me that the city owned that property already, which is not the case. Let's just say that right now. The city does not own the gas station. But it's just rebudgeting this number that is the same number we had as a placeholder in the last year and which was not spent last year. Will it be spent this year? Maybe it will. We'll see. But putting it in the budget doesn't decide that one way or the other. So I guess that was the second point, that this is rebudgeted from the previous year. My budget question has to do with more follow-up on one or two items that I had in my alderman inquiries. I was pleased to see this memo on a follow-up to some of my questions, but based on the discussion I just had with Director Kukler, I'd like a little bit more of an answer to my question about the effects and consequences of delaying the sewer camera purchase, or the relative costs, because you've said that a two-person crew pretty much spends their whole time on that, and yet the numbers that it has here don't include any of those personnel costs. So when you say the costs to hire an outside company are $589,000 over the next 11 years, purchasing the camera is $190,000, and that would save us $399,000 over the next 11 years. That implies that employee costs and maintenance of the camera and all that stuff is zero. One other inconsistency here is that it says that it includes a 5-year maintenance contract, but a 5-year maintenance contract doesn't take us to the end of 11 years. So what are those costs? And then the other thing that I found very confusing about this answer was that the existing camera is due for replacement, which would cost $50,000. I mean, I thought that was what we were doing, replacing the existing camera. If we could do it for $50,000, we just wouldn't have that extra piece that shoots off down the ancillary pipes. Is that the main difference? Because that's a quite expensive feature, and I guess my question then is, what's the value of that? Is there any sort of cost benefit that you can tell me about what we would be getting for that extra $150,000? That's a very expensive thing. And I know that, you know, looking for leaks is a difficult thing to do, but obviously we've been doing it. Obviously, you know, we use outside consultants that are videoing the sewer lines now, and we are finding some leaks, or we're not fixing leaks. I don't know. Tell me.
We use the camera we have now to video. We don't use anybody else to video the sewers right now. So that 2-man crew cleans the sewers, videos them, and identifies leaks. And when they are easily fixable, we do go in and make repairs that we can make quickly in house. The value of that feature that goes up and looks up the private sanitary sewer service lines, you can actually identify with all those thousands of feet of pipe what leaks might be there. I don't know what we're going to do with those, because eventually you hit a spot where you leave the right of way and you're on private property, and we don't have any there's no mechanism in place to require property owners to do anything on their property yet, but it would be good to know how much is coming from private property, and that would be something for council to consider in the future, is what, when we fix our pipes and the part we're responsible for, what private property owners might need to do, or if council doesn't want to make them do anything about it. But we don't have any way to quantify what's coming from private property lines right now versus our sewer mains. Yes, the $50,000 would be to replace the camera, the exact camera we have right now. That's what the estimated cost is to replace that. The $190,000 is to get a camera that can do a lot more than that and is more durable. And yes, 5 years does not, it absolutely does not doesn't cover 11 years of costs for maintenance. I don't know what those costs are yet for beyond that. I would have to do some research.
Okay, I guess then my question goes back to what are the effects of delaying the sewer camera purchase? Because we're using a huge amount of fund balance right now, so the question came up of, which things have to be done this year, which things might not have to be done this year, and that question wasn't answered in this packet. So if we did have to hire an outside consultant to do this, if our camera is actually completely broken beyond repair, just talk to me about this a little more.
I believe the cost this year, I'd have to go review EEI's proposal, would be $40,000 or $50,000 to pay someone to do the televising that's required for this coming fiscal year. So we had to hire, the effect of not purchasing this cameras, we'd have to hire somebody to do the televising that would also include the sewer lateral lines for this coming fiscal year, that we wouldn't be able to do it all in-house.
And do we know what that would cost for a year?
It's like $40,000 or $50,000. I don't know the exact amount, but.
Which would be significantly less than
spending
those
$190
2
this year,
employees
yeah,
plus
correct.
buying
But
the new camera.
Mhm.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, this certainly isn't the only large ticket item in the budget that we were talking about as a big one-time hit that happens to be in this year's budget. But it's just something I feel like we didn't maybe get quite enough details on. So if you could update me on some of these numbers, I'd appreciate that just going forward.
Okay.
City Administrator Coakley?
Thank you. I wanted to just jump in on one of the comments and questions. There's part of the question that Alderman Goodman is asking, as I'm hearing it, is, I'll just ask it the only way I can think of on the spot here. What would happen if we didn't have, through attrition or whatever, we didn't have those two-man crew and we hired all that out consulting-wise? I think your answer, Phil, and the question, and we're doing this on the spot at a meeting in a couple of minutes. We're not getting into the details, so I think we're missing a point, is what I'm trying to say is, I think they do more during the year than simply televising. That's a lot of what they do in the Flushing, but if we didn't have them, what would we be missing? Do we still need that crew? I believe that we do, but I can't articulate all those details. So I think in a follow-up, that's part of that, I think we can substantiate why they're there, what they do, and that we need them, because if the question is, if we didn't have that crew and we didn't buy that equipment, then it might be cheaper to get the consultants. I think we'd be missing a lot of work that they do. I think I finally got the question out. Thank you.
So basically, you're asking what percentage of their time, I guess, is that what you're saying? What percentage of their time is spent using the camera versus what would they be doing the other % of their time?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
You speak Coakley.
Mayor Brummel?
Back to the gas station for a moment. Recently made a presentation to a homeowners association in Warrenville, and at the end of my presentation, there's always a time for questions. And the first question was, why can't the city do something with that gas station at the bottom of the hill? It's a question that comes up frequently. My point is that there's significant interest in the community from the citizens to see something done with that eyesore and with that relatively abandoned structure there. So from my perspective, if there's a way that we can find to deal with that in a positive way and to facilitate redevelopment, we should go ahead with that it will be supported by the community. And it seems very unlikely, given the situation that we have, that private enterprise is going to buy that property, not knowing the extent of the contamination, and take on that responsibility, take on the responsibility of demolishing the buildings and then building a new building. My sense is that if the community doesn't use its resources to redevelop that property, will all be gone, and that gas station will still be there, and it'll look pretty much the way it does now. I'm very much in favor of investigating every possibility to take that responsibility on and to see that property redeveloped in a positive way, because I don't think it will happen unless the community does it.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos?
I want to go back to the camera. I just need a little bit of education on this. When we talked about the I&I, I understood that the flows go out with excess rain because probably rain is going into those pipes through leaking. But also was talked about that there may be situations, and this is what I'm trying to clarify, where before we had all the code officials and everything examined, that there may be residents or businesses, or I don't know what, that are taking their sump lines and putting them through the sewers. Is this a major concern, and how does the more expensive camera, will that have anything to do with trying to figure any of that out?
Some pumps tied into the sanitary sewer are a significant concern. I don't know, I don't have a feel as to how much of our I&I, on how many people are connected. I mean, when we did that Harvest Court and Lakeview Court storm sewer in the backyards, we allowed them to connect, it was for the purpose of allowing them to connect their sump pumps to it. And one gentleman who was a relatively new resident there, it wasn't him who connected the sump pump to the sanitary sewer, voluntarily told us, oh, hey, my sump pump's connected to the sanitary sewer, and he disconnected and then connected into the storm sewer. I would suspect there's a fair number of people out there, but I couldn't even estimate how many people are connected. But every time it rains, the sump pumps will kick on and kick that water right into the sanitary sewer. This pipe that this camera that can televise up the laterals would be helpful in determining whether, it's water coming from leaks in the pipe, if there's say the pipe joint is separated and there's water just pouring in through there, or if it's coming from the house during when there's heavy flows and when it's raining. So it'd be helpful in identifying where those flows are coming in from, and probably help us hone in on who might be connected as well.
And so having the more expensive camera will make that a little bit easier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions regarding the discussion of the 2020 budget? Okay, that was in, for discussion purposes only. So we're on to number 6, discussion of the FY 2020 citywide work plan. City Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. As I noticed, I've stated at previous meetings, this is really a companion piece that feeds into the budget. So if there's questions about that, they may be pertinent. I wanted to make sure they stayed together through the review of the budget meeting. So if there's questions, we'll certainly try to answer them. Thank you.
Alderman Davalos.
I have 2 questions. The first one is on page 1, and it has to do with Tier 2 items removed from the citywide work plan. And I'm concerned with number 3, the final engineering, design, and easement acquisition for Manning Avenue parking and pedestrian improvements, that it is coming off all work plans. So I just don't need a long answer, but is this coming off all work plans forever? Is this just, there's been glitches in the system and money or whatever? Is there just a short answer for that? Maybe? I liked this project, that's why I just want to find out what happened.
City Administrator.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was turning the pages while you were asking. It's the Manning Avenue sidewalk is what you were asking about? That's just been delayed due to really practicality of time and project. In fact, I'll just tell you, we've been talking about that project since I think I first started, and Fred Bevere was our street superintendent. So it's going to get done. It's just a very involved project for a very short distance. We do need sidewalks there. I walk that way to the police department all the time, so I'm probably one of the most frequent users of that area, walking in the street, because there isn't really a good sidewalk. It's just been delayed because we can't get to it. It hasn't been delayed because of anything else budgetarily or anything.
But it will also create more parking spaces there if we change the parking, right? Is that part of that? Or is that another one?
I don't know that it would create more parking spaces. It has the potential to reduce the number of parking spaces in that immediate area. I'd have to see the
Okay, that's
design
fine.
be able to answer that. I don't think Public Works has gotten that far with designing it to be able to answer that definitively either. I see Phil shaking his head, so we'll go
Yeah,
with no.
okay, that's fine. My last question on the citywide work plan is the very last thing. About the 2015 strategic plan goals. It seems like this work plan has been divided up and a lot of things have been jettisoned off into the department work plans. Is that, you talk here about, work plan establish, based on, it was taken off based on recent council input. But a lot of the comments in red on this plan are that things have gone to community development, they've gone to public works, they've gone different places. And at last it says, we'll pursue the larger scale project management efforts and instead develop a list of progress on strategic plan goals. I don't understand what's happened here. I don't understand what this means.
Administrator Coakley?
I'll start, and Christina will clean up anything that I err on. There's two separate things, I think, in your question. The one with the strategic plan, our staff is working, in fact, we're spending part of our staff meeting now getting input on each goal by goal to delineate the progress that we've made and then list out possibly any other action steps we need to take going forward. We're, 3.5 years into the strategic plan, something like that. We've made a lot of progress, but we haven't been able to report them out for a bunch of reasons we've talked about. In January, we talked about that specific item and I believe got to the point of let's move it off of there. If it's not a high priority, we're not going to get to it. Let's not keep talking about it. So I think that answers the question A about the strategic plan. The second part of your question or comments was that many things have moved to the departments. And that's correct. The citywide work plan involves large projects that have multiple departments, at least 2 departments that are involved. Oftentimes it's everyone is involved or there's 2 or 3 departments involved in something. So if it's just something community development's doing or finance or just a public works project, it would not make this list. It will be on their work plans that they presented when they did their departmental presentations. It'd certainly be included in the budget, but they wouldn't be listed on this. This is the ones, we created this, if you recall, a couple years ago now, because we'd have community development doing a lot of great projects and suddenly, well, Public Works would be doing all their list and there'd be a convergence where we'd suddenly realize we couldn't do both sets of those projects at the same time. They were just overwhelming or too much capacity, our staff didn't have the capacity to do those things. So we started this process to feed up from the departmental work plans to make sure we're capturing the things that are overlapping so we don't bury any one person. A lot of times the nexus there was our senior civil engineer that we'd both, everybody be walking in and dropping the projects on her desk and she's going, I'm only one person. So that's why we did that, and that's exactly how the system works. The departments work on their plans, the things that overlap feed up to the citywide work plan, and then we use that as a tool to keep track of things across the city.
Okay, thanks. So you've taken off everything now that's just one department, so it's kind of cleaned up now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Widener?
I just have a question about the statement about the work plan being removed, or items being removed from the work plan based on recent council input. And I'd like, I guess, that clarified, because I don't recall the input, and I don't remember ever that council input was an actionable item. It seems to me that in order to do something, it would be need to be an official action and not just based on casual input.
City Administrator Coakley?
You there. Thank you. There was a discussion, I don't remember the details of that meeting, so I may have to look to Christina if we need that. There was discussion on this at one of the committee of the whole meetings in January, where the consensus was apparently to take that out. We took it out, brought it back to the next meeting, and I believe that the consensus continued, and we discussed it at the city budget workshop, that this is the plan that had been evolved from there. I don't recall, correct me, anyone if I'm wrong, that there's been a vote on this yet. This would be voted on with the budget next week, along with several other things that pertain to the budget. So it hasn't been done just in some, I'm sorry, this is going to exaggerate that comment. I don't mean this in any negative way, but it wasn't just one-person comment or a side discussion or something. This came from discussions with the council, and then we've brought it back with the revision in hand. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does, but it just seems like if we're going to discuss something as important as strategic plans, goals, and those items, that efforts to remove them from the work plans that we've spent so much time on, it should be something based on something other than input and discussion.
Assistant City Administrator Christina White.
I think, if I understand correctly, what Alderman Widener is asking or saying is that you would like there to be some official council vote about removing that strategic plan update item from the work plan, from the citywide work plan that's proposed, or potentially reverting it back to the Tier 3 item where it was before.
Yes.
Okay.
Alderman Goodman?
I do remember the specifics of this conversation. I believe what happened was the city administrator said that we weren't going to be hiring a consultant to break the strategic plan down into actionable steps, but that we were going to be doing the work in-house. So taking this item off the list just acknowledged the fact that the costs for hiring that consultant are too high, and we're never going to do that. So the idea of implementing the strategic plan is not being taken off the work plan. The idea of hiring a consultant to break it down into action item steps was, and I believe the consensus of the council was, to not spend, I forget how much it was, but he'd said that when we'd last looked at this several years ago, the price was double or triple what we had budgeted for that, and that the staff didn't feel that it should be pursued any further. So I think the phrasing here is poor, but I think the part about taking it off the work plan is accurate, that we did discuss that as a council and direct staff. Okay, then if that's your recommendation, we're not going to move forward with that part of the strategic plan implementation goals, action items, steps. But not that we don't want progress to be reported back and to be accountable to the public. We absolutely do continue to want progress on all of the items in our strategic plan. So I hope that that helps clarify the people who had questions.
Your memory clarifies it, but I don't think the statement is clear as far as, any kind of official statement as far as what we're doing with the strategic plan. I think it needs to be tightened up. I agree with your statement regarding that it needs to be clarified to reflect what your memory has recalled regarding this. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I'm just checking to make sure that we're writing that down. I think I see Christina getting that note. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. That was, again, no action for that item. Number 7 is an informational update on the Public Works Department FY 2019 work plan and decision packages. Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. I'm assuming that some of these titles that are heading up these paragraphs mean the 2020 budget and not the 2019, or is it because we're just about ending 19, right?
No, it's supposed to be 2019, because we're still reporting on what progress we've made on the work.
Oh,
plan
you're
for
still reporting,
2019.
okay,
Yep.
okay, all right. On page 2, The Fox Hollow lift station. I guess they resolved that issue, that private property versus city property and all that, or is this something different than the water those folks were experiencing in Fox Hollow?
This is a sanitary sewer lift station, so it's,
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so there's the Prairie Path. That may be, so on page 3, projects not included in the 219 work plan, the Public Works work plan. These are just off for now, I guess.
some of them are off for now. There's a couple of them, the EMA office conversion of Public Works Garage was a
Right.
old decision package that we kept reporting on, not making progress on, but like this year or next fiscal year, we have in the
Okay.
budget to a citywide service and staffing level. So a couple of them are off indefinitely or maybe forever.
I wanted to ask the chairman, the Public Works Service Level Staffing Study, is that going to come up as an item next? Or is that now?
No, that's number 8.
Thank you. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Unless anyone else has a comment. Again, on number 7, about the work plan and decision packages. Okay, Alderman Widener?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment just on the idling of the certain solar projects that have been recommended. You know, that was my fear when they were originally at Tier 3, that they would drop down to Tier 3 and never be moved up. And I just fear that as a community or a staff, we're not embracing new technologies and movement in this direction to have more sustainable energy systems. You know, you look at other communities, you see all kinds of solar projects, even, you know, starting as simple as, you know, some of their traffic signage and things like that that are lit through solar means. And I guess overall, I just think that there's been you know, some support for solar projects at the council level by at least, you know, 3 of the aldermen that I can think of, and I just you know, am disappointed that it that it isn't being embraced by staff and that there are no projects moving forward in the coming fiscal years. I know the community development department has paid attention to it and changed some zoning, and I don't feel that there's been a total lack of progress, but I just don't feel that there's been a lot of new initiatives placed coming forward from Public Works in that regard. So that's all, just to express a disappointment.
Administrator Coakley?
Thank you. There certainly haven't been a lot of big projects that have gotten constructed yet or groundbreaking. I know the Public Works Department is still working with Symbiont on the whole solar, it's not a solar farm, solar panel project over at the well house, the well site over on the east side of town off of Warrenville Road. That has been a much longer process than we saw initially. We thought at least I thought we'd have answers by January. There's still a lot going on. We're still in the running for that project. As far as I know, I'm getting head nods. There have been reviews and considerations of other things, but there's also still the same problems with the number of projects that we have, the capacity of our staff that we have. We are trying to move some of those things along. Certainly, thank you for commenting on those. Community Development Department has made some very positive strides in the permitting, so we can help make it easier for private residents and for businesses to engage in solar projects. Coming up, Public Works Department is also working behind the scenes with the whole Soul Smart movement and getting a lot of information from there so that we can move ahead with projects. But you're correct, we're not seeing any projects actually getting implemented yet. I'll tell you, that's one of my frustrations with economic development or anything across the board is I look at outcomes, and development to me is when I see the new, whatever it is, being built or opening. The planning process is essential, but it's not what gets me excited about a project. One last note, there is I've got the date in my calendar, I believe it's in May, the Soul Smart new inductees, I guess I would call it. There's a big ceremony at Argonne that city folks have been invited to. I would mention, as it just occurred to me in this conversation, anybody else is interested in attending that, the invitation was sent to the mayor and I and community development director and some others. But that's certainly going to be a good event, and we've certainly learned a lot and are working towards those things. I hope that we have things moving along faster. I do agree, it would be nice to see those things move faster, Alderman, but we are working a lot of things behind the scenes. So I don't want to forget that all the work that Public Works is handling on those things. And we're trying to fit them in as best we can with all the things that the council has approved and directed. Part of that's why we do the citywide work plan and have the budget presentations to make sure that we are focusing on the things that the council wants us to do and trying to keep them all in the queue as best we can. There's many things that are going on and many things we're still working on, paths and street lighting improvements and many other things that and development projects. I don't want to keep on rambling. Thank you.
Alderman Wilson?
Just a comment about that is the fact that, you know, the proposal for Well 9 is on the Public Works here, but unfortunately, when you look at the citywide ranking of the solar product, out of 35, it's number 34. So it's not moving up on the scale into tier 3 by any means. And we are working, number 33 is evaluation of potential solar energy opportunities, which is what the administrator was just talking about so far as individual homes. But this has to do with Well 9, and it's just a little disappointing that it comes back down to the very last, next to the last item on the citywide. So it's just, in looking at it, it doesn't give me much confidence that it'll ever move out of tier 3. So I too am looking forward to any progress that we can make on that. This is a project that if we converted there, I know it's not going to save us all, but I mean, there's $1,000 a month that Gordon estimated that we could save on electrical charges. So anyway, I'm looking forward to moving it up the list on the prior. Thank you.
Public Works Director Phil Kukler?
I want to point out that well number 9 conversion to solar is what we're working on with Symbiont. The agreement we're talking about with the site at Warrenville Road and Maycliff is well 9. That's what we're talking about with them and trying to advance. And it's been a little bit of slow going, trying to coordinate with them to get an agreement done. But that's we are consistently following up them to get feedback when we've been waiting on items from them. So we're not ignoring that. That was an opportunity given the space there that we identified first to try to pursue with a different company. So the whole purpose of the Symbiont agreement was to have somebody else own and maintain and manage that, and we'd realize the electric savings through that lease agreement at Well 9. So the idea is we're not experts in solar. We don't have our own electrical staff. We don't generate electricity ourselves. So at least an initial project, have somebody else doing that on our property and saving the city money as a result of that agreement. Would be extremely beneficial to the city. And if it turns out over the course of that agreement and observing what's involved in maintenance that we learn and we feel that we can take that on ourselves, and that might lead to other projects that we as city staff could own and maintain. But thought that was a good project if we can get it to move forward to start with as a project. It's an isolated project with low risk for the city.
Thank you.
Alderman Davalos?
So here's my issue. I've got this same project on both work plans. So is this one that will flip off of the citywide and go into Public Works? Just hasn't happened? Or does this also involve community development and Public Works so it stays on the city work plan? Well, I'm just asking. I don't. And the second thing I just want to say is, being the liaison to the Environmental Advisory Group, and Lauren Whetstone is on that group, she's the advisor or the liaison from the city, I have been very impressed at the education that Public Works people are doing. I mean, this is a new area. It's getting more and more popular and more feasible as we go forward. But in the beginning, everybody was coming up to speed. And Lauren shared with us quite often things people were reading and doing and seminars they were going to, and a lot of it was in this weekly report. So I have to applaud Public Works for that. You can't jump into something like this without knowing a little bit about it unless we're going to spend money for consultants again. Actually, I think things are moving along. It all takes some time, so.
City Administrator Coakley?
Thank you. There are items like this item that is on the citywide work plan that is also on the departmental work plan. That's where it feeds up to, but there's multiple departments involved, so it's on the citywide work plan. I want to just remind everybody on the council, we did all the work, staff, to put this together and have been discussing this plan with you, but if it does not meet the council's needs, or there's something that the council wishes to change, then please let us know that and vote accordingly. This is coming up for your approval next week, but if it's not to your wishes and we need to move something up or move something down or move something off, please let us know that. I believe that the city staff, including me, are doing exactly what the council has set, and the priorities have been set by the council. If the staff is setting priorities outside of that, then we should be corrected and not do that. I don't think that's going on. I think what we're following is what the council has directed, and if there's a change, please vote accordingly and direct us to change that, because we're here to do what the council has set as a policy and direction. Thank you.
Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to that. John mentioned that some of the initiatives that are on the citywide work plan are also on the department work plans. There are also initiatives and projects that are on the department work plans that are not on the citywide work plan because they're not involving multiple departments. So what he just said about moving things up or down on the citywide work plan follows the same structure as the department work plans. If there are priorities that need to be moved up, certainly this is the time to have that discussion, and staff will review what's on the list and try to adjust accordingly.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, now to number 8, Alderman Davalos. This is informational update on public works service levels and staffing study. Alderman Davalos.
I just have one thing to say. I've been looking at this plan since whenever we started making it, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I made check marks on my sheet. I will rip it out to show you. I made check marks under completed or implemented. This is awesome. Look at all these check marks. Thank you very much. This was a daunting report that consultant gave us that day long ago. And I think you guys have made remarkable projects. There are so many more things checked off on this list than are not. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay. That's it. We have nothing under miscellaneous, nothing for closed sessions tonight. All we need is a motion to adjourn, unless no one wants to go home. Alderman Goodman.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.